If a monarch butterfly just visited your yard, or ever has, it was telling you something. Not a metaphor, not a feeling. Something specific. Something scientists spent decades trying to decode and only recently began to understand. And what it's really saying about your yard, about you, and about what's been happening in that garden while you weren't paying attention. That's what this is about. That monarch didn't land in your yard by accident. It found you. What you're about to hear will change the way you look at every monarch you ever see again, starting with what its markings are actually communicating, why your specific yard may be part of a navigation system that has existed for longer than the pyramids, and the one thing scientists discovered in 2019 that no one in mainstream media ever picked up. Your yard is not a backdrop. It never was. Most people walk past the same yard every day and never realize what's actually happening in it. That's what we're here for. If that sounds like you, subscribe. You're in the right place. Stay until the last section. Because what scientists have documented about why certain places get chosen, over and over by butterflies that have never been there before, across generations that have never met each other, is the part of this video you will think about for a long time after it ends. 1. Most people assume monarchs are passing through, a brief stop, a coincidence of geography. They're not. Monarchs navigate, not vaguely, not approximately, with a precision that embarrassed scientists when they first mapped it. They use the sun as a compass, correcting for its movement across the sky in real time, using an internal clock located in their antennae. Not their brain, their antennae. Researchers at the University of Massachusetts Medical School confirmed this in 2009, and when they blocked the light-sensing function of monarchs' antennae, the butterflies lost their directional bearing entirely. They could no longer orient south. Confused, groundless. The antennae weren't decorative, they were the instrument. And the monarch in your yard is using that instrument right now, reading the angle of the sun through your garden, calculating its position in a journey of up to 3,000 miles. You are a coordinate, a landmark in something vast. 2. The orange you see is not decoration, it's a warning. Monarchs sequester toxins from milkweed during their larval stage, cardinalides, compounds that cause vomiting in birds after ingestion, an experience they remember. The orange and black pattern is a signal that has been read correctly by birds for millions of years. Eat me and suffer. But here's what most people never hear. Not all milkweed is equal. The cardinolide load a monarch carries as an adult depends entirely on which species it fed on as a caterpillar, and the difference is not small. Some monarchs make a bird sick after a single bite. Others barely register. That gap comes down to the plant. Common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, the species most likely growing at the edge of your yard right now, is the primary source of the chemical defense most migrating monarchs carry. The compound profile that birds across the flyway have learned to recognize. The butterfly resting on your plant right now may be carrying a defense built entirely from what grew in yards like yours along the 3,000 miles it traveled to get here. And it got that armor from the milkweed, your milkweed. But where that butterfly's going, and what it's navigating toward, is where this gets harder to explain. 3. There is a forest in the mountains of Michoacán, Mexico, where monarchs have been overwintering for generations longer than any human record. Every autumn, hundreds of millions of them arrive in the same trees. Not similar trees, the same trees, sometimes the same individual branches. Scientists have confirmed this through tagging studies, and the numbers are extraordinary. In peak years, a single hectare of that forest holds more than 22 million butterflies. The weight of them bends the branches. No monarch alive today has ever made this trip before. They are the great-great-grandchildren of the butterflies that left Mexico last spring. The spring journey north happens over 3 or 4 generations, each one born, migrating further, dying. None of them sees Canada. None of them sees Mexico. But the last generation born each summer feels the pull south anyway. Researchers at the University of Chicago sequenced the genomes of monarch butterflies from across their entire global range and found that the migratory drive, the pull south, the timing, the destination, is encoded in the genome itself, not learned, inherited. A memory older than human civilization pressed into every cell of every butterfly that has ever hatched from a monarch egg. The one in your yard carries that memory right now. What no one has fully explained is how precisely that memory is aimed, how specific the destination really is. 4. Something started going wrong in the mid-90s. The eastern monarch population, the ones that reach your yard, numbered close to 1 billion at its peak in 1996. By the winter of 2013 to 14, that number had fallen to around 14 million, a decline of over 98% in less than 2 decades. The cause isn't one thing. It's the collapse of a system. Milkweed loss from herbicide-resistant agriculture, climate disruption shifting the timing of migration, illegal logging at the overwintering sites. But one of the least talked about drivers is something quieter, the disappearance of nectar corridors. The flowers monarchs feed on during migration, goldenrod, asters, native coneflowers, have been stripped from roadsides, farmland edges, and suburban yards across the entire flyway. They are not starving in the forest. They are starving on the way there. Your yard sits in the middle of that corridor. What you plant, or don't plant, is not a personal aesthetic choice. It is a supply decision in a 3,000-mile logistics chain. That changes what a monarch landing in your yard actually means. It means your yard passed the test. 5. Here is what makes the collapse harder to understand. Not every monarch migrates. A resident population lives year-round along the Gulf Coast and in parts of California. Monarchs that evolved a different strategy entirely. No migration, no Mexico. Instead, they breed continuously through winter and repopulate the eastern migratory stock each spring when the populations meet. But genome sequencing published in the journal Nature has shown something that shifted the understanding of what migration actually is. And this is the part that never made the news. Migratory and non-migratory monarchs have diverged genetically. Their wings are shaped differently, built for endurance rather than agility. Their flight muscles burn fuel differently. And the internal trigger that tells a migratory monarch to stop reproducing and fly south when the days shorten. That trigger simply doesn't fire the same way in a resident monarch. The migration drive is not universal. It is a specific inherited trait, and populations that lose it permanently. The monarchs that reach your yard in autumn are not average. They are the ones who still carry the full genetic instruction, the ones who feel the pull south when the days shorten, who will cross states and mountain ranges on the same ancient bearing their ancestors used. They are not passing through your yard. They are the ones who still can. Here is the part no one talks about, because it doesn't fit cleanly into what people expect from a butterfly. Monarchs return to the same trees, not the same forest, not the same mountain. The same individual trees, sometimes the same branches, year after year, across generations that have never been there before. Scientists confirmed this through decades of tagging studies at the overwintering sites in Michoacán. The trees that monarchs cluster on in November are the same trees their great-great-grandparents used. No individual butterfly alive today was there last year. Every single one is making this trip for the first time. And they find the same branch. The mechanism is not fully understood. Researchers have proposed magnetic sensing, solar geometry, inherited chemical recognition of the forest microclimate. None of these explanations is complete. What is clear is that the information gets transmitted, not through learning, not through experience, but through something encoded so deeply in the biology of these animals that it survives death, survives metamorphosis, survives 4 complete generations of turnover before the same location is reached again. That is what is flying through your yard. Not a butterfly that wandered in, a biological archive, something carrying information older than any map ever drawn of the continent it crosses. And the fact that it stopped here, in this yard, on this particular plant, is not nothing. What a monarch butterfly is really saying when it lands in your yard.